When Princess Diana broke down crying after William's birth, Queen Elizabeth did something she hadn't done in decades, something that would change their relationship forever. It was June 21st, 1982, and the golden afternoon light was filtering through the windows of St. Mary's Hospital in London. Just hours earlier, the world had celebrated the birth of Prince William, second in line to the British throne. Crowds had gathered outside the hospital, photographers had captured the perfect shots, and the official announcements had been made. But inside room 314 of the private Lindo wing, Princess Diana was experiencing something the public would never see. The overwhelming reality of becoming a mother at just 20 years old. Diana sat propped up in the hospital bed, her blonde hair still damp with perspiration, holding her newborn son in trembling arms. The pale blue sequined hospital gown she wore caught the afternoon light, but her eyes were red-rimmed and filled with tears that seemed to fall endlessly. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted William's tiny blanket, the weight of him feeling both precious and terrifyingly fragile. This wasn't the joyful scene the world expected. This was raw, unfiltered human emotion, the kind that royal training had never prepared her for. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to the tiny bundle in her arms. William's perfect little face was peaceful, unaware of the weight of expectation that had been placed on his small shoulders from the moment of his first breath. "I'm just a kindergarten teacher. How am I supposed to raise the future king?" The irony wasn't lost on her. Just 18 months earlier, she'd been Lady Diana Spencer, working with children and living a relatively normal life. Now she was the Princess of Wales, married to the heir apparent, and holding the future of the British monarchy in her arms. But what Diana didn't know was that someone had been watching her struggle. Charles had left hours earlier for a polo match at Windsor. "Duty calls, darling," he'd said with a perfunctory kiss on her forehead. "The photographers have what they need." His absence stung more than Diana had expected. She understood that royal men weren't typically present for the messy, emotional parts of childbirth, but she had hoped, perhaps naively, that Charles might be different, that perhaps love might override tradition just this once. Instead, she was left alone with a crying baby and the suffocating weight of new motherhood, while her husband played sport with his friends as if nothing monumental had just occurred. The hospital room felt suffocating despite its spacious layout. Flower arrangements from well-wishers crowded every available surface. Dozens of bouquets from heads of state, celebrities, and ordinary citizens who had fallen in love with their people's princess. Congratulatory telegrams from world leaders were stacked on the bedside table, each one a reminder of the global attention focused on this tiny new life. The weight of it all, the attention, the expectations, the future, was crushing down on Diana's young shoulders. Even the walls seemed to close in, decorated with bland hospital artwork that did nothing to soften the clinical reality of where she found herself. Alone with a newborn and drowning in responsibility, she felt utterly unprepared for. She looked down at William again, his tiny fingers curled into perfect little fists. "Your daddy's playing polo," she murmured, her voice breaking slightly. "I suppose that's more important than being here with us." The words came out more bitter than she'd intended, and immediately she felt guilty. This wasn't William's fault. None of this was his fault. Diana had been crying quietly for nearly an hour when she heard the soft knock on the door. Assuming it was another nurse coming to check on her, she quickly wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. But what happened next would shock even the royal staff, who thought they'd seen everything. That's when the hospital room door opened, and Queen Elizabeth II stepped inside. The Queen was dressed in her typical daytime attire, a powder blue wool suit with matching hat, her signature pearls, and sensible black shoes. She dismissed her lady-in-waiting in the hallway and entered the room alone, something that virtually never happened in her carefully orchestrated daily routine. Her expression was unreadable as she took in the scene before her. Her daughter-in-law, clearly distraught, holding her newest grandson. But behind that composed exterior, Queen Elizabeth was processing something unexpected. She had come to perform a duty, to make the required royal visit to welcome the new heir. Instead, she was witnessing something far more human and immediate. A young mother in crisis. "Your Majesty," Diana stammered, struggling to sit up straighter despite her exhaustion. Even in her emotional state, protocol demanded respect. I wasn't expecting. Please don't, the Queen said softly, raising her hand to stop Diana from attempting the customary curtsy. Her voice was gentler than Diana had ever heard it. How are you feeling, my dear? The unexpected kindness in the Queen's tone was Diana's undoing. She'd been holding back tears for hours, trying to be strong, trying to be the perfect princess the world expected. But something about the Queen's maternal presence broke down all her defenses. I'm terrified, Diana admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone expects me to know how to be a mother, how to be a princess, how to be everything to everyone. But I'm just 20 years old and I feel so alone. Her voice cracked as she continued. I spent my whole life working with other people's children, and I thought I understood what motherhood would be like. But this is different. This is my son, and he's going to be king someday, and what if I mess it up? What if I don't love him enough, or love him too much, or make the wrong decisions? What if I'm not strong enough for what's ahead? The words tumbled out in a rush, months of suppressed anxiety finally finding voice. The Queen studied Diana's face for a long moment. Here was this young woman who had captured the world's attention, married her son, and just given birth to her grandson. The same young woman the press had dubbed Shy Di, and whom the public adored for her apparent innocence and warmth. But what Queen Elizabeth saw now was simply a frightened girl who needed comfort. Without saying a word, the Queen walked over to the bedside chair and sat down. This simple act was extraordinary in itself. Queen Elizabeth II, who had spent her entire life maintaining careful distance and formal protocol, was positioning herself at eye level with her daughter-in-law. May I hold him? The Queen asked, gesturing toward William. Diana carefully transferred the sleeping baby into his grandmother's experienced arms. The Queen's face softened immediately as she looked down at her grandson. He's perfect, she murmured. Absolutely perfect. For several minutes they sat in comfortable silence. The Queen held William with the practiced ease of someone who had raised 4 children of her own, while Diana watched, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders for the first time all day. Then the Queen spoke again, and what she said next would change everything between them. I remember when Charles was born, she began, her voice thoughtful. It was November 1948, and I was terrified. I was only 22, and suddenly I was responsible for the future of the monarchy. Everyone assumed I would know instinctively how to be a mother because it was my duty, but the truth is, I was just as scared as you are now. Diana looked at the Queen in surprise. This was not the conversation she had expected. The Queen Elizabeth she knew was composed, certain, seemingly unshakable. The idea that she had ever been frightened or uncertain seemed impossible. You were scared? Diana asked quietly. Absolutely terrified, the Queen confirmed with a small smile. I had nannies, of course, and plenty of advice from courtiers, but at the end of the day, I was just a young woman holding her baby and hoping desperately not to make any mistakes that would damage him or the crown. I remember lying awake at night, listening to Charles cry, wondering if I should go to him or if that would make him too dependent. I was told that royal children needed to be self-sufficient, but every fiber of my being wanted to comfort him. The conflict between maternal instinct and royal duty, it starts from the very first day, and it never truly ends. The Queen paused, looking down at William's sleeping face. The difference is, I didn't have anyone to tell me it was normal to feel that way. Everyone expected me to simply know, to be instantly maternal and confident and perfect. Diana felt tears welling up again, but this time they weren't tears of fear or loneliness. They were tears of relief, relief at finally having someone understand what she was going through. I keep thinking about all the things that could go wrong, Diana confessed. What if I'm not a good mother? What if I can't handle the pressure? What if I fail him? She gestured toward William. The Queen was quiet for a moment, and when she looked up at Diana, there was something new in her eyes, a warmth and understanding that hadn't been there before. My dear, she said softly, the fact that you're worried about these things tells me you're going to be exactly the mother he needs. But what Queen Elizabeth did next shocked even the royal staff stationed discreetly outside the door. She carefully placed William back in Diana's arms and then, breaking 60 years of royal protocol, she reached out and pulled her daughter-in-law into a gentle, maternal embrace. Diana gasped softly at the unexpected contact. In all her time as a member of the royal family, she had never seen the Queen display such physical affection. Handshakes, yes. A brief touch on the arm during formal occasions, perhaps. But a full, warm hug? Never. The embrace was gentle but firm, and Diana could smell the Queen's familiar lavender perfume, feel the subtle texture of her wool suit against her cheek. For a moment, time seemed suspended in that hospital room. Two women from vastly different generations and backgrounds united by the universal experience of maternal love and fear. "You're not alone in this, my dear," the Queen whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I know what it's like to feel the weight of history on your shoulders. I know what it's like to lie awake at night, wondering if you're strong enough for what's expected of you. But you are, and I'm going to help you." Diana broke down completely then, sobbing against the Queen's shoulder as all the fear and uncertainty of the past few months poured out of her. The Queen held her gently, one hand smoothing Diana's hair in a gesture that was purely maternal, purely human. "I was scared too when Charles was born," the Queen continued softly. "I was scared when Anne was born, and Andrew, and Edward. Being a mother in this family, it's different. The whole world is watching, waiting for you to make mistakes. But Diana, you have something I never had." "What's that?" Diana asked, pulling back slightly to look at the Queen through her tears. "You have warmth," the Queen said simply. "You have the ability to connect with people in a way that comes naturally. That little boy in your arms is going to need that. The monarchy is going to need that. Don't let anyone convince you to hide that gift." The words Diana had been desperate to hear for months, that she was enough, that she belonged, that she had something valuable to offer, were finally being spoken by the one person whose opinion mattered most. "Thank you," Diana whispered. "I've felt so lost since the wedding. Everyone has opinions about what I should do, how I should act, who I should be, but no one asked me how I was feeling. I'm asking now," the Queen said gently, "and I want you to know that you can always come to me, not as the Queen, but as a mother who understands, as someone who has walked this path before you and knows how lonely it can feel." They sat together for another hour, talking quietly about motherhood, about the challenges of royal life, about Diana's hopes for William's future. The Queen shared stories about raising Charles that she had never told anyone, her fears about his sensitivity, her concerns about preparing him for the throne, her own struggles with balancing duty and maternal instinct. "Charles was such a serious little boy," the Queen recalled with a fond, wistful smile. "He felt everything so deeply, every criticism, every expectation. I worried constantly that I wasn't giving him enough affection, but I'd been raised to believe that royal children needed to be strong, independent. Looking back, I wish I'd trusted my instincts more." Diana absorbed every word, realizing that she was being given something precious, not just advice, but permission to be human, to make mistakes, to learn as she went. When it was finally time for the Queen to leave, she stood up and smoothed her skirt. But before she reached the door, she turned back to Diana one more time. "Diana," she said, "I want you to remember something. That little boy doesn't need a perfect princess for a mother. He needs someone who loves him unconditionally. And looking at you now, I can see he already has that." The Queen paused at the door. "Oh, and Diana, next time you're feeling overwhelmed, call me. Not the palace, not the private secretary. Me, directly. Promise me." "I promise," Diana said, her voice still shaky with emotion. After the Queen left, Diana sat holding William in the golden evening light, feeling fundamentally changed by what had just occurred. The woman who had seemed so distant, so formal, so unreachable, had revealed herself to be deeply human. More than that, she had extended a hand of friendship and support that Diana had desperately needed. The impact of this embrace would shape the future of the monarchy in ways neither woman could have predicted at the time. Years later, when Diana was struggling with the breakdown of her marriage to Charles, she would remember this moment. When the press was particularly brutal, when she felt isolated and attacked, she would call the private number the Queen had given her that day. Their relationship would have its ups and downs over the years. The pressures of royal life and media attention would strain even the strongest bonds, but the foundation laid in that hospital room would never be completely broken. When Diana gave her explosive panorama interview in 1995, the Queen was privately devastated, not just by the damage to the monarchy's reputation, but by the personal betrayal she felt. Yet even then, she remembered the vulnerable young woman in the hospital bed and tried to understand the desperation that had driven Diana to such drastic measures. And years after Diana's death, when William became a father himself, the Queen would tell him about that day in the hospital, about his mother's fears and her courage, about her love for him that had been evident from his very first day of life. "Your mother," the Queen told William as he held his own newborn son, "was one of the most naturally maternal people I ever knew. She worried constantly about being good enough for you and Harry, but her love for you both was never in doubt. That day in the hospital, I saw her heart completely, and it was beautiful." The embrace that lasted only a few minutes had ripple effects that would last for decades. It humanized the Queen in Diana's eyes and showed Diana that even the most seemingly perfect and controlled people struggled with the same fears and uncertainties that plagued her. Most importantly, it gave Diana the confidence to trust her instincts as a mother. The Queen's words, that William didn't need a perfect princess, but someone who loved him unconditionally, would guide Diana through all the challenges that lay ahead. When Diana broke royal protocol to sit on the floor with homeless children, when she insisted on sending William and Harry to regular schools, when she refused to let them grow up isolated from the real world, all of these decisions were rooted in the confidence the Queen had given her that day. The formal relationship between monarch and daughter-in-law would continue, of course, with all its prescribed protocols and public ceremonies. But underneath all of that formality, there was now something deeper, a understanding between two women who had both felt the crushing weight of royal expectations and found ways to survive them. The hug that broke 60 years of protocol became the moment when Princess Diana truly became part of the royal family. Not because of her marriage to Charles or her title, but because she had been seen, understood, and accepted for who she really was. A young woman trying her best to love and protect her child in extraordinary circumstances. And in that hospital room in 1982, as the golden afternoon light faded into evening, two women who would go down in history for very different reasons found common ground in the most fundamental human experience of all: the fierce, protective, sometimes frightening love of a mother for her child. The night Queen Elizabeth hugged Princess Diana was the night the royal family gained something it had been missing for generations: the radical act of one woman seeing another's vulnerability and responding with pure, uncomplicated compassion. That was the moment when duty gave way to humanity, when protocol stepped aside for love, and when the future of the monarchy was secured not through tradition or ceremony, but through the simple, powerful act of one person comforting another in their time of need. And William, sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms, was the innocent catalyst for it all.